So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special video again. And today's video, we're going to be talking about spirituality. What is spirituality, and how do you look for spirituality in a birth horoscope? And this is a very vast and deep subject. This subject can probably take me 3 videos equivalent to like 30 minutes. That's how deep this is, and I'm going to try my best to summarize this in one video because some of the best messages in the world come which are so short and sweet. So I'm going to try doing that. Okay. And what we're going to talk about is the combination that we see, for spiritual progress. Now, when it comes to spiritual progress, what does it mean, spiritual progress? Because most of us, including me, had this perception about spirituality that you have to grow your hair long, grow a beard, wear a pure white or orange clothes, give up on all the material life, material relationships, go around the world learning wisdom, and then finally sit in front of a stage and start preaching it to other people of what spirituality is. And this actually either encourages or discourages most people. They're like, I don't want to give up on my material life. I don't want to be like leaving my girlfriend, my wife, my kids behind, and me enjoying jazz club on a Friday night or going out for shopping. I don't want to do that. But that's where the misconception comes into play. And this is simply my way of spirituality. This is simply my particular principles of spirituality. Because the thing is, you can be at a busiest mall purchasing the gift for your child. You're in a rush, people are around you, moving and shoving you. But even in that moment, when you have all those bags in your hand and you're paying for that, the doll for your daughter, you can be just as spiritual, if not more spiritual than, let's say, Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, J. Krishnamurti. Because spirituality, what we see, what we have seen so far is the physical side of spirituality. Meaning all that orange clothes and that attire that you see of somebody, who's preaching about the Vedas or Bhagavad Gita or the Quran or the Bible, and you feel I have to live by a certain set of rules and regulation in order for me to experience that spirituality, that sixth sense, that awakening of Kundalini. But spirituality is actually here right now. As I'm making this video in front of this physical object called camera, while my family's downstairs, Yash is sitting right there. Because spirituality is this, This is my particular meaning that I have come up with for myself. Many of you will not agree with this. That's okay. 1/3 will never agree with me. 1/3 will always hate me. 1/3 will agree with me. They'll always, follow what I say. 40% will not care. So that's okay. That's what this world is about. That's what's so beautiful. But my definition of spiritual progress is simply being aware of who you are. So whether I am working on my computer, watching some YouTube video, on Netflix, watching some movie, playing pool, upstairs, or playing some video game, as long as I'm aware that I am not of this body, I am not of this material plane, even though I have to work and pay bills, I am not this. I am completely something different. I am from a different dimension. I am this eternal dimensional being that goes from one reality to the other. And once you're simply aware of all your senses of who you are, that's all that spirituality is. But the progression of spirituality, how do you get to this point, let's say where I am, where I don't need to sit in front of the Buddha to really know I am in my spiritual mode. No. I can be just watching a movie or looking at a chart when I'm doing a consultation and I'm in my most maximum spiritual mode. And that's what we want to talk about. Because some people, they'll go and visit the jazz club and drink and do whatever, and yet they're not conscious. They're simply really into this physical world. But I can be anywhere. I can be buying a burger from a drive-thru, but I am aware of what this whole thing is. What this whole thing is. And that's what spirituality is. Simply being aware. So now that we have gotten this out of the way, let's talk about how do you see this in a chart of a person and see if they ever will realize it, how quickly they will realize it, how intensely they will realize it. I mean, like, my level is not intense. I'm not the one who simply will give up everything and, like Yogananda, go and experience the most intense Kundalini and all these different powers and become this sage. No, I probably will never be able to do that. But there are combinations that will automatically accelerate this process for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we are talking about spirituality and spiritual combinations and the way to see spirituality in a person's chart, we most importantly have to look at yogas. Yogas are simply the combination of planets that exist in your horoscope, whether through a conjunction or through an aspect, that activate a certain event in our life, that activate a certain mission in our life. Like, for example, in Vedic astrology, if the planet that controls your 5th house and planet that may control, let's say, your 1st house, 4th house, 7th house, 10th house are conjunct together in any house, it creates something called the Raj Yoga, meaning that whichever house that they're placed in together, through those things you'll be able to rise in life. So let's say if your 10th Lord and your 1st Lord are conjunct in the 6th house, shows by defeating enemies, by facing obstacles, you will rise to the top. Like a CEO, CFO, president, If you see, like the Indian President Narendra Modi, how he rose up from, the most harshest of places, that's what this Raj Yoga does. Same way we have something called Dhan Yogas, combinations for wealth. Like the 2nd Lord and the 11th Lord are conjunct together in any house, you will attain wealth through that house in the time period, the proper time period, when it allows you to, through Mahadashas and Antradashas. And obviously all of these things are, if these vocabularies don't make sense to you, it's okay. If you are new to astrology, obviously check out, my website here, where you will find many articles, especially my books, Astrology, Conjunction, and Aspects of the Speed of Light, including my new magazine on destiny and careers, and all the consultations are on this link here. So this way you can familiarize yourself with all these very, very easy concepts that may look like an alien language to you, as it did to me once, 12, 15 years ago. So just like there are combinations for being a king, being wealthy, there are combinations for realizing your spiritual potential. Realizing that I am sitting at a bar drinking and I am aware of myself. That awareness comes at a certain time in our life, especially when we have those combinations activated. But the combinations, the very first yoga for spiritual progress is something called Sannyasa Yoga. Sannyasa Yoga occurs when you have 4 or more planets in your horoscope together, conjunct together, especially in the Moksha triangle, Trikon, the Dharma triangle, Dharma houses, and especially the 10th house. 4 or more planets together create a yoga of sannyasa, meaning a person will suddenly be awakened one day and would want to leave all the material life behind. They would want to not have anything to do with material things. They simply want to be fully engaged in their spiritual sense and to experience that thing called Kundalini, where all of your chakras are awakened. And chakras are not just awakened in one day. No. First you have to open up one chakras. Then after a while you open up the next, then the next, the next. That's the process. So especially when these combinations happen in a person's chart in the houses of 12th house, 1st house, 4th house, 8th house, 9th house, 10th house, and especially the 5th house can show somebody who will progress in their life very quite easily in terms of spiritual progress. But especially in this conjunction, 9th and 10th Lord must also be present. Meaning the planets that are controlling your 9th and 10th house should be present in the conjunction of these 4 planets, which tremendously helps in attaining spiritual progress in life. Then the next yogas is actually connected to the 9th and 10th house. 9th and 10th Lord, meaning the 9th Lord, the planet that controls your 9th house, and the planet that controls your 10th house, if they are conjunct together in one house. It's known as Dharma Karma Adhipati Yoga. And especially when 9th and 10th Lord are conjunct in the 9th or 10th house, Dharma Karma Adhipati Yoga becomes very, very strong. It's a Raj Yoga and Dharma Karma Adhipati Yoga, meaning you will sit at a throne of spirituality. You will sit on a throne of, spiritual bliss. One of the peoples that have this Dharma Karma Adhipati Yoga is Deepak Chopra. He has his 9th and 10th Lord are conjunct in the 9th house, I believe, which is Mars and Venus. So that's one of the big combinations for this progression to spiritual life. And the other one is something called Muni Yoga. What is Muni Yoga? Muni Yoga occurs when the ascendant Lord of your Namansha chart, which is a very important divisional chart in Vedic astrology, known as the D9 chart, when the ascendant of the chart is conjunct the ascendant of your birth chart in your birth chart. And I know, again, this is alien language. You got to familiarize with all these videos and my books that have detailed information on these things. Is that divisional charts are like the heart of, our charts. So Namansha chart, so let's say if you are an Aries ascendant, okay, or no, let's say even you're a Virgo ascendant, and you are, let's say, a Gemini ascendant in Namansha chart. That means Mercury rules your Namansha and your birth chart. And if Mercury is in the ascendant, it gives you Muni Yoga. Let's say if you have, let's say, Cancer ascendant, and then you have a Libra ascendant in the Namansha chart. That means if Moon and Venus are conjunct in your birth chart in the first house, creates a Muni Yoga. So what's a Muni Yoga? Muni Yoga simply means Muni, like the spiritual sadhu, spiritual guru, who has nothing to do with all the material life and material relationship in this world. These are the people who easily find success in spiritual progress. Then the next combination we look for is actually known as a Josha. Josha meaning a bad combination, which is known as Kemdhram Dosh. What is Kemdhram Dosh? Kemdhram Dosh occurs when there's no planets 12th or 2nd to the moon or conjunct the moon. Meaning your moon is alone. There's no planets on the 12th from the moon or conjunct the moon or the 2nd from the moon. And if you have Rahu or Ketu conjunct or on either side of the moon, that still counts as a Kemdhram Dosh because nodes do not count in this yoga because those are not physical planets. When this occurs, a person loves being alone. They like to be by themselves. They like their own company. They're the ones who will, on a Friday night, when it's the most popular date night, they will go to the theater by themselves in the evening. Sit among all the, first time daters and second time daters and third daters. And they don't care. They just want to watch the movie. These are those introverted people who ignore the party, or if they're in the party, they'll be in the corner sitting, observing. These are the people who simply want to be left alone in their room, reading book, watching something and just being in their own world. Because in order to really understand yourself spiritually, you have to be by yourself. Because when the noise from the outside is gone, guess what you have to do next? You simply look within. So Kendram Dosh becomes very important here. The next one is a Moksha Yoga. Moksha Yoga, simply yoga is of liberation. This occurs when the Ascendant Lord and Ketu, Sun and Moon are in houses 12th, 4th and 8th house. Whether they're all together or separated, whenever Ketu, Sun, Moon and the Ascendant Lord are in the Moksha triangle, it shows a person will find their liberation in this life. And especially if Ketu is in the 12th house, it shows that a person, this is their last life. After this, they're going to be going back and connecting to the source energy. So that becomes a very important yoga. The next one is known as Panch Mahapurush Yoga. Panch Mahapurush Yoga simply means yoga of highly spiritual people. It's just the name of the yoga. It occurs when planets, especially, it could be any planet from Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, when they're in their own sign or in their exaltation sign, in the 1st, 4th, 7th or 10th house only, it creates Panch Mahapurush Yoga. But for spiritual progress only, Jupiter, Sun, Saturn and Mars are the most strongest. Why? Because first of all, Moon and Mercury are very, receptive planets. They're the ones who really give their power and show their power when they're connected with other planets. They're not very strong in their promises, pretty much. Then Venus is the planet of material growth, luxury, wealth. So when it comes to spirituality, Venus has to be connected with other elements to be spiritual. But you'll find people, with debilitated Venus, exalted Venus, being spiritual, but mainly the reason why we concentrate on Jupiter, Sun, Saturn, and Mars, because Jupiter is, first of all, significator of spirituality, higher knowledge, higher learning, higher wisdom, philosophy. So Jupiter obviously gives a person that ability to know the knowledge that they need to learn for that spiritual progression. Then Sun is very important because Sun and Jupiter are sattvic planets, meaning these are the sadhus, these are the wise men. Sun is the life giver, the soul. Your soul is very pure, so it's a very pure planet. So this is why these two planets becomes the light of spirituality. But Saturn, Mars actually becomes the most important. Why? Because Saturn shows you reality of this world. Saturn shows you the reality around you and the boundaries that you must break to break this reality. And Saturn represents discipline, organization, and structure. And Mars represents discipline, willpower, and stamina. So why are these important for spiritual progress? Well, if you study the charts of any spiritual famous guru that you know of, from Yogananda to Osho Rajneesh to J. Krishnamurti, all of these sages had the toughest life. And it's when they found the discipline in their life, that's when the spiritual progression starts. Kind of like this. Saturn is a significator of discipline, okay? And Saturn represents the breaking of the ego. Meaning a sadhu has no ego. They don't care if you are coming in Rolls Royce or if you're coming in rickshaw to meet them. They'll be like, you're just the same person. I see you exactly the same way. They do not care if you give them a Rolls Royce or if you offer them a rickshaw. They'll take either one in the exact same way and with the exact same emotions. Because that's where Saturn is breaking the ego down. Saturn just breaks it. He's like, when every time you're going to show off, I'm going to break it down. So a wise man is like, okay, fine, I'm aware of it. I won't try to beat Saturn. And the reason why Mars becomes important is because Mars is a soldier. And soldier is the most disciplined person, because soldier has to wake up 4:30 in the morning, make his bed, clean, shower, brush his teeth, wear the clothes, be outside, on the line, ready to march, ready for that hike every morning. So in order for you to be spiritually disciplined and to experience that worldly kundalini power, you're going to have to get up every morning, do the mantras, do the meditation, do the yogas. So discipline comes from Mars. And so Panch Mahapurush Yoga occurs when the planet is in its Mool Trikon or exalted placement. So like Jupiter in Cancer or Jupiter in Sagittarius especially is known as a Panch Mahapurush Yoga. Saturn in Libra or Aquarius, Sun in Leo or Aries, Mars in Aries or Capricorn, but especially in the 1st, 4th, and 7th and 10th house. But this will only confirm itself if the same planets are exalted or in their own sign in the Namansha chart in Kendra. Or at least in their own sign in the Namansha chart. It will confirm that whatever you see outside is inside. Because here's the thing. Who am I as this person? This body, let's say if I'm a muscular like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm going to kick your ass. But if Arnold's heart is weak from inside, he's of no use. If his heart doesn't function properly, he can't stress his heart. He can't lift any weights. That's why it must be confirmed in the divisional charts. Because divisional charts become very, very important regarding regarding spiritual progress, especially, which I'll discuss. But as far as we were talking about facing the reality and the harsh life, this is the biggest one. People who become the most spiritual people in the world face some of the toughest and the harshest reality in life. They have the toughest charts. They have the worst yogas, the worst combination in their life for them to come out of and be this lotus in the gutter. And especially when people ask me, when I'm doing their consultations, they're like, can you see spiritual progress in my chart and tell me if I have spiritual progress? Well, for me to do that, I'm going to have to talk about everything negative in your chart. Like, well, yeah, you got bad time coming. You've got going to happen, this is going to happen to you, this is going to happen to you, and this is all going to change you to make you spiritual. I would never do that. Like, I remember I had this person in my career consultation where he messaged me back. He's like, you want me to be in software engineering, but I'm a monk. I've given up on all these things. I'm not going to, no matter what you say, I'm not going back. Well, I'm like, then why are you getting this consultation? This is not a spiritual consultation. I'm simply looking at your career from the materialistic standpoint. What will make you satisfied to pay that bill? To get your dream car, to live that life that you want to live. Because once you've attained everything in your life, only then you can experience spirituality. Once you had 20 Rolls Royce, 4 Ferraris, a mansion, the most beautiful woman, all that money in the world with a diamond ring and the $100,000 watch, then what happens after that? Person's empty. Then they're like, okay, well, I've gotten my own private jet and everything. This is not fulfilling me. Oh, I wonder what's next. Spirituality. This is why it's actually so important to live the maximum material life you possibly can for at least the first half of your life. Because after that, you really realize as a human being that those things will make you empty. It's only the spiritual progress that keeps you going. But we have to experience it ourselves. We can't just learn it from books or from people on the stage telling us. They'll tell us, but nobody learns it until they experience it. This is why in career consultation, I'm not telling you to become a monk and give up on everything. Even when I tell somebody a spiritual career, Even when it's related to meditation, yoga, I'm like, you can become a meditation yoga teacher. You can become a pranic healer and Reiki healer. You can become an Ayurvedic doctor. So you can pay your bills and follow the spiritual path. It's for me to really say, look, you're going to be the next, Yogananda and all this. I'm going to have to look into all the harsh stuff that I refuse to look into. So the harder the chart, the more the progress. And especially, you'll see in some of these people, like they've had the worst relationships, or all their marriages never worked out, because their marriage is a material thing. It's not a spiritual thing. Your spiritual marriage is with that source energy. So you will see combinations and things in people that show that material life will not progress. And obviously I'm not going to discuss that here at all. That's something you'll just have to learn it somewhere else or ask someone else. Then the next thing that becomes extremely important here are the nakshatras. Why are nakshatras important? Because, and this is something I have read, it's not confirmed, but they say that nakshatras were the original zodiac signs. It's not the sign of Aries that the original astrologer looked at back 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. It was actually the constellation of Ashwani, Bhrani, Kritika, what made up this Aries constellation that they really looked at to predict things. So constellations become very important. And especially when I made my video of intuition, seen in Vedic astrology in a person, I talk about some of those nakshatras. Like especially nakshatras like Ashwani, Bhrani and Kritika, because Bhrani becomes important. It's about labor pains. It's about understanding other people's pain. Kritika is about this spiritual burning yourself, old self, and bringing a new you. Nakshatras like Aradhra, Mula, Sastabisha, Magha, Vishaka, Purva Bhadrapada, Revati. Some of these nakshatras are some of the nakshatras that make a person go through this destruction and understand and rebuild. Like these are the nakshatras that shows a person who they really are. So the spiritual progression becomes quite easy for them. But some of these nakshatras are material as well. Like Sastabisha nakshatra is a nakshatra of physicians, surgeons that make millions of dollars. Sastabisha is also the nakshatra of a spiritual person, intuitive psychics. So either or, it does that. Aradhara nakshatra is a nakshatra of destruction. So through destruction, you become who you are. Or with Aradhara nakshatra, you may become a computer programmer or going to information technology. So nakshatras become important more than even the signs. Then comes the divisional charts. Divisional charts become very important, especially the Namansha chart and Vimsamsa chart. Namansha chart is this. Okay, divisional chart, and especially Namansha, the D9 is Navamsha and D20 chart is the Vimsamsha. Vimsamsha is the actual chart related to spiritual progress. Namansha chart is this, like I was giving you the example of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Imagine if I have this big muscles, but my heart is weak and it's just ready to give up anytime. That's what the divisional chart is. If I'm what you see here, if this is strong, yet my heart is weak, I am of no use. That's what Namansha chart is. This is what Namansha shows us our spiritual progression, the path that we're going to for spiritual progression. So if that path is strong, that doesn't matter what you look like outside. You can be a quadriplegic and you will still be able to reach that spiritual kundalini, become the light body and just leave. Then comes the Vimsamsa chart, which is our true spiritual progress. And this is the chart where you especially look at planets like Jupiter. Like Jupiter becomes the Atma Karka of Vimsamsa chart. Just like Atma Karka meaning significator. Like in your birth chart, main birth chart, Sun is the significator. He's the Atma, right? Atma Karka. In the Mancha chart, Venus becomes the Atma Karka because it's the chart related to marriage and spouse more than anything else. Then Saptamsha, which is a chart related to your children, and Vimsamsha, Jupiter becomes the Atma Karka because Jupiter is not only the significator of children, the D7 chart, but also spiritual progress, which is the D20 chart. And especially if Jupiter is in the Moksha triangle or Trikona in this chart, it'll show how the progression is coming. And you also again have to look at every other planet there, because you can have the spiritual combinations in your birth chart, Namancha chart, and Vimsamsa chart. But if you do not run through that time period, the Mahadasha that is activating this time period, then it probably won't activate itself. So like as you see that people, when they go through their Ketu Mahadasha, and if Ketu is in Trikona or Moksha triangle, 99.9% of the time a person suddenly wants to join spiritual groups, yoga and meditation groups, suddenly are searching for astrology online. And that's how they find me on my YouTube channel. Because when I do their consultations, I'm like looking at that. I'm like, 2009 is when you really got into all the astrology and meditation, and you were like, yeah, well, that's because in 2009 your Ketu Mahadasha started. So all these, like Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra in the 8th house, I had this person, and since 2003 they simply have been part of a spiritual organization as an engineer. Now they're engineer too, but they're part of the spiritual organization because of Jupiter being activated in the 8th house, and especially in the nakshatra of Ketu, which is Mula, the most spiritual nakshatra that takes you to the roots of your being, who you are. So these timing with divisional charts become important. Then comes the part related to the 3 elements, and especially these 3 elements are the elements of Ayurveda, which is Karpa, Pitta, and Vata. These are the 3 stages that we as human beings go through. Like, let's say Karpa represents our youth, where we nourish ourselves. Pitta represents our adolescence, our adulthood, where we're just full of fire and energy, like I'm ready to get that job and get that project and become a CEO, CFO. And then Vata is this slow wise man. He's sitting here like me, and he's just like watching everybody running around doing this, and he knows all of these things doesn't matter. What matters is stopping and smelling the roses. That's what these energies do. And the signs, the zodiac signs, the nakshatras, and the planets are part of these 3 elements. So let's say Mars and Sun are Pitta planets. Why Pitta? Because they're fiery planets. Let's say Gemini or Aquarius sign are Vata planets. So planets, signs, nakshatras, all in your chart are in a certain position. So what happens is, especially in Ayurveda, an Ayurvedic doctor will look at it. See, if you have too much Pitta, you'll have certain disease. If you have too much Vata, you will have certain alignments, whether mental or not. If you have too much Karpa, you'll have something. So balance has to be there. So in spiritual progress, we are mainly looking for, the first energy we look for is Vata energy, then Karpa, then Pitta. Pitta is the last one. Because Vata energy is that old wise man, person who attains the knowledge and gives the knowledge. Because the best symbolism for Vata energy is that, in your cell phone, you have those signals. Oh, I have full signal. Meaning your phone is now receptive to information. And phone also helps you attain information. That's why Vata becomes the most important. Your ability to get information, find gurus, find people, find books to progress you spiritually. Then Karpa energy is a subtle energy, balanced energy, which is earth and water, which is where you're sitting calmly and you can be patient, nourish yourself properly, discipline yourself properly to attain the information. Pitta becomes the least important because Pitta is energy pretty much. You do need energy to learn all these things. But the thing is, too much energy becomes very flamboyant energy. Then you're this flamboyant guru. Without any of your fault, you are this flamboyant, this person who wants to be all over the world and, all over the media. But the true message then gets lost sometimes. But it's always better to find this balance in this. And we'll discuss all this. This Vata, Pitta, Karpa, all these energies, what they mean, which signs are controlled by this, what planets, what nakshatras. But this is mainly always used for health purposes, for Ayurvedic doctors. That's why I personally, just know about this, but I don't really use it on my day-to-day thing or day-to-day consultations and things of that nature. But for spiritual progression, it becomes important, of course. So this is like the basic meat of the information that I can give you right now. Because this is, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make the 4th part to this in the next coming 2-3 years. This is a very, very vast subject. And it's a very deep subject. It's like an ocean. It's vast and deep. So 2 or 3 videos may not even do justice to this. But we'll do videos. We'll do taken accounts of some of the horoscopes of spiritual people. I've already done Yogananda with Dr. Dennis Harness. I might do Osho Rajneesh, soon, which hopefully you'll like. It'll be entertaining and educational. I just need to find my proper attire. But all of this information will come, but just wanted to give you this basic ground level information is what to look for really for spiritual progression. And what the spiritual progression really means for you. Let me know in the comment. So guys, this is my analysis of spiritual progression in Vedic Astrology and seen in Vedic Astrology. If you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And if you want to know where your planets are placed, if they're in these spiritual energies, these yogas that I talked about, for that, check out the links here and check out my full astrological report, my books, my consultations, all at this link here. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow with the Saravan Nakshatra for that one. Bye-bye.